The Cartoonerific podcast is sponsored by the Wonderful World of Animation Gallery, home of rare and wonderful fine animation art. Visit their website at wwagallery.com. And for our Cartoonerific listeners, you will receive a special 10% discount off any purchase if you purchase by March 25th, 2024. Just go to wwagallery.com and enter code CARTOON10 for your 10% discount. Once again, this discount is only valid until midnight, March 25th, 2024. Once again, visit wwagallery.com.
The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
It's Cartoonerific. Cartoonerific. It's Cartoonerific. With your host Brian Mitchell.
Welcome to the podcast. This is the Cartoonerific Classic Animated Cartoon Podcast, and my name is Brian Mitchell, and I am your host. This week, we're going to be talking with a gentleman. He's a very, very fine animator. He's a wonderful talent. He's going to be on in a few moments. I just want to talk about, the animation industry in general. There's a tremendous amount of talents that work behind the scenes. You got people that do storyboards, and you have people that design characters and backgrounds. You have, layout artists. You have background artists. You have, of course, the animators. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people behind the scenes, and there's a lot of great talent. We touched upon that in last week's podcast with Don M. Yelp, and we were talking about some different people that worked in the business, like Dick Bickenbach, who was a really wonderful layout artist. And I think at one time he was an animator, but he ended up doing a lot of design eventually for Hanna-Barbera. But he had worked for, did all those wonderful layouts for Tom and Jerry. And so you don't hear too much about Dick Bickenbach today, but you don't hear about a lot of different people, like Eric Clayworth, who was a really great animator at Disney back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. John Sibley was another one who, a great character animator. Hal Ambro was another one. I mean, there's so many people, Virgil Ross, Ben Washam, but a lot of these people you don't really hear about today. And so, we're going to be focusing on that a little bit more in future shows. But I guess my point is you got workhorses behind the scene. You got really great talent that are doing wonderful scenes of animation for these feature films. And one of those people is our guest for today. His name is Bill Waldman. I worked with him at Don Bluth Studios. He's an excellent animator. He's really come a long way from when I first met him. But even then, he was a powerhouse because he churned out a lot of footage. And just a wonderful talent, wonderful gentleman. And he's going to be on with us next. So please don't go away. We'll be back after this.
Cartoonerific is the place to be to celebrate hand-drawn animated cartoons. The Cartoonerific podcast features interviews with the magic makers behind your favorite animated cartoons, with episodes uploaded every Friday. Or visit the Cartoonerific blog featuring articles about classic cartoon animation. At the Cartoonerific Gallery, view original animation art and memorabilia from your favorite animated films and TV shows. The company store features exclusive swag from the Cartoonerific universe. And coming soon, brand new world premiere cartoons on the Cartoonerific channel. It's all here. Join the fun at www.cartoonerific.com. That's cartoonerific.com. It's Cartoonerific, saving the universe one funny cartoon at a time. And now it's time for our special Cartoonerific guest.
Well, I'm really excited today. We have somebody I worked with back in the day. Geez, it must have been 100 years ago or something. Keep using 100 years ago. No, it was back in the early 90s. I was working at Don Bluth Studios, and this young upstart came in and took over the place as the mightiest animator in the universe. Anyway, he's very talented. He went from Bluth. He worked at Warner Brothers, and then went on to work on a bunch of Disney movies. One of the most recent was Mary Poppins Returns. He worked on some of the animation on that for Duncan Studio. And he's an incredible talent. I want you to welcome Bill Waldman. Bill, welcome.
I'm doing well.
Good. What inspired you to get into this crazy business of animation?
Well, I always drew when I was a kid. And even from earliest time, I mean, I can remember even before going to school. I would have been 4 or 5 years old, and it wasn't until probably I was about 10 years old, probably, and I remember seeing kids with drawing on the edge of their tablets in school, making little flip books. I didn't know what they were called at the time, but I thought, hey, that's really kind of neat. I wonder if I could do that, but do something a little more elaborate than the stick figures they were doing. So I just started to do. At the time I was starting to get into watching Disney movies, and I thought maybe I could just draw my Disney characters and try to recreate some of the things I was seeing in Disney movies on these little corners of these tablets, and just sort of try to make it, in my mind, try to remember what I saw, in the movie, and trying to, recreate something. If I saw it, on The Wonderful World of Disney on Sunday nights, they would show clips of Disney movies.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's do you remember? Do you remember the first one you attempted on a flip book form? You didn't try to do Fantasia, like Night on Bald Mountain in a flip book form?
No, nothing that elaborate. No.
Right. Oh, okay.
No, honestly, I wouldn't remember. That was so long ago, and like I say, it was so obscure. But yeah, I think around that time, around 10 years old, I saw the reissue of Mary Poppins,
right,
in the theater for the first time.
Was that in 74?
73.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
73. Summer of 73.
That's the first time I saw Mary Poppins was in 1973. And it was on a double bill here with Lady and the Tramp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Boy,
which I'd never seen before. Yeah.
That's quite a show, because Mary Poppins is a long movie, and that with another movie, that's you got your money's worth.
I got my money's worth. Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, it was and I went into the theater not expecting much, because for some reason my older sister had seen it somehow before, and I don't know if she saw it she must have saw it on the first release. But she would have been really young. She would have been 4 or 5. I don't know. I think they kept those movies in release for longer than, just a few months back then. I think if it was successful, you could see a movie maybe a year later, or maybe even longer after the release of it.
Oh, sure. Well, depending on when it's released, because I think Jungle Book was released in the summer of 67, because I remember seeing it in the summer of 67. And I don't know if it stayed around for a while, but I'm sure Mary Poppins, because I think it was the top box office grosser that year, wasn't it? Blew out the box office around 45. I say 45 million bucks it made, which was a lot of money back then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mary Poppins was the #1 movie that year. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'd have to look up the release date on it to be accurate. I'm sure I could.
Yeah. Yeah. But I saw that when for the reissue, first time I saw it was the reissue in 73. And I went in not expecting much, because I remember my sister was telling me, "Oh, it's not that good. There's all this magic in it," and she sort of downplayed it a little bit. So I went in not expecting much, and I was completely blown away.
Yeah.
And 10 years old, that's a great age to see that movie. That's like almost the perfect age to see that movie. You're old enough to really appreciate it, but you're still young enough to really have that kid-like wonder and that kid-like excitement about that kind of a story and that kind of a movie. So I just was like, wow, I got to see everything with the name Walt Disney on it after this. I mean, I think I'd seen a few like Disney movies before that, but it was just very vague memories, like big memories maybe of seeing Snow White in the theater or like at a Christmas release. Maybe Jungle Book too. I think I do have a vague memory of seeing Jungle Book when I was really young.
Right.
And there was this. It was like it wasn't like I was really into animation that young. It was what it was there was a Hallmark card store in downtown Williamsport where I grew up, and they had this place decorated like to the hilt. It was just unbelievable decorations from ceiling to floor, and it looked like a jungle to me. So this movie comes out, The Jungle Book, and I was like bugging my mom, "Oh my gosh, take me to see this movie! Take me to see this movie!" Not knowing really what it was, just the title.
Right.
I was like, I wanted. So I remember my mom taking me a very vague memory of seeing it. Like I say, I was probably 4 or 5. I mean, I was really young when that came out.
But you saw it in the 70s, right? Did you see it in the 70s or the 60s?
I saw it on the reissue then when I was like 15, when it was, the reissue was like 78 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I that's what I really remember and appreciated. Like I say, the first thing when I was really young, I very, very sketchy memory of it.
Right.
But Mary Poppins was really the one where it started me on this kind of Disney kick of looking at all the Disney movies and just being really inspired with. And I was always watching the newspaper for the next release to come out and the reissue. And saw almost all the features, during that period during the 70s, like Bambi, Pinocchio, Snow White,
right,
Cinderella, Dumbo. I mean, I saw all those I think every one I saw in the theater before they went to the video release of it. So I saw every one of my first experiences of seeing those movies was a theatrical thing, which was great. I was really grateful for that.
I grew up in the 60s, so during that time we would go to Radio City Music Hall and they would have the new releases of stuff. And so I'd see all the live action Disney movies. And of course, The Wonderful World of Disney, or Wonderful World of Color. That's what it was back then, before Disney passed away. And so during that time, I saw a lot of Disney movies. I saw Jungle Book on its first release. And when I saw The Jungle Book, I was like looking at it like, wow, I can't believe these characters are, and I knew they were drawn, but they were, they were animating and moving like real people. And I was amazed by that. And I was like 5. I was 5 years old when I saw it. So, but we saw a lot of Disney pictures, The Love Bug and Blackbeard's Ghost, and even stuff that was in drive-ins, because they had drive-ins here. And I remember seeing the Shaggy Dog and Absent-Minded Professor. So I grew up with a heavy diet of not only Warner Brothers cartoons and famous studio cartoons and Fleischer and all that other stuff, but heavy Disney, and really inspired me. So, I think there's a certain age. The second time I saw The Jungle Book in the 70s was like once I saw it again, I was like, it kind of reinforced the decision to want to actually go into the medium. And I think Jungle Book is an amazing movie because it's on a lot of people's lists as, that's the movie that inspired me to get into animation. Mm-hmm. I hear it over and over and over again. So it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think, even before I'd seen seen it again when I was older and could really appreciate it and remember it, I had I think my mom got me the soundtrack album. So I was familiar with the songs, the story. So by the time I saw the actual movie, I was really like, oh my gosh, this is really amazing.
Yeah.
But I remember, I think it was when I saw The Rescuers on the first release, was really the point of where and I know that some people don't think The Rescuers is that great of a movie. Some people think that's kind of mediocre or whatever. To me, I think it's one of the best ones they did during that kind of whole period. between like the two fairy tales, I call it, between Sleeping Beauty and Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I had to pick my three top films in that whole era, that whole 30-year period, I would pick 101 Dalmatians, Jungle Book, and The Rescuers.
Yeah.
To me, those are the most successful movies in terms of just how it made you feel, artistry, just an experience of liking the movie.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I'm sorry. I have to agree with you on The Rescuers because when I saw The Rescuers, it had a lot of heart to it.
Yeah.
And like Robin Hood didn't, right. And so kind of cold. Aristocats was like that too. It didn't really have a lot of, it was pretend heart, but Jungle Book really pulled at you. I think Rescuers had that quality too, and I do agree with the other people that go that it's not the greatest story, but it's, sometimes it doesn't have to be. Sometimes if it has the right elements in it, it can really pull it through. And and I think Rescuers affected me too, because I was 16 when I saw it. And,
right.
And actually, maybe even I think I was 15 when I saw it, and that's right after that I saw the movie. I started sending drawings to Disney, and that was Oh,
that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it was after seeing that movie that I was like, I just said to myself, I have got to become a Disney animator. I don't know how to make this happen. I'm not really sure what the process is. I don't know how to get from where I'm at to there, but I need to pursue this. I need to like sort of really make an earnest effort to get there.
So how'd you do that? How'd you do that to?
How did I do that?
Well, did you get some books on it, or did you write somebody, or?
Yeah, no, I remember there was a stationery store in downtown Burbank, and they had that Preston Blair book of how to animate cartoons. I remember going there because that's where I would buy my thick tablets where I would do my little animation flip books on. Right. And then I remember going to the book section and seeing this book by Preston Blair, and I thought, oh my, this is exactly what I want. And I remember even in the back page, they had how to build a animation light stand table where you could draw on it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. So of course I asked my dad to buy it for me, and it was a cheap book, so that was not a problem.
Right.
But yeah, it was that, and then I remember I was in ninth grade, and I asked my art teacher was noticing me making these little flip books and trying to recreate these little Disney things on it. And he says, hey, we have a camera here in the school district that can take one frame of movie film at a time. So he said, I think we can hook this up on a tripod and just zoom in close and shoot your little animation tablets, and we can actually have a Super 8 millimeter movie.
Wow.
I was like, oh, wow. I just couldn't believe that this was happening. I was like, it was like, you mean I can actually make a movie? Yeah. So, of course, it was just very crude and very, very amateur, of course.
Right.
It was like, that's what I did, and showed the class, and it kind of made a little bit of a big splash. And then I was like, well, I got to high school, started high school the next year, and I was like, well, I felt like I wanted to take it a little bit of a step further and actually, do hand-painted cells on acetate, and, actually try to create something a little more complex and with sound.
And how'd that work out? How did that work?
I mean, I think it worked. Well, I mean, it was successful in the sense that I showed it as my portfolio to get into Cal Arts here in California, and I got accepted, which I was actually kind of shocked that they did. But I think what it was they were probably impressed that I took on such a daunting task and something that ambitious, even if the animation wasn't that great in a lot of places. In some places, just almost embarrassing how bad it was. But
Yeah, but I'm sure at the time you were just like, wow, or you,
yeah. And the thing is, I didn't even have a peg hole punch to register my drawings to punch holes. So I was lining the drawings up with little markers when I would shoot it, and even when I would draw with it, I just had little markers to try to get for registration. And again, so I got wobbly kind of stuff happening again. But like I say, I just didn't have the equipment or the training or know-how to really do it the right way. So I was just trying to improvise.
right.
I was just like, the important thing is just make the movie. That was my thing. Just make the movie.
Just do it the best way you know how.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned so much through that process. That is just, people ask me like, well, how do you learn this? Well, the best way to learn it is by doing it. And I think if you learn so much just with the process of going through that and making the movie. Things come up problems you got to solve and hurdles you got to cross. And so I think that was the best lesson, the best experience from that is the learning aspect.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people are like that, that are in the business that just, they didn't have the facility to do it, but they wanted to do it so much they found a way of doing it. I bought a Super 8. Well, actually, my aunt bought me a Super 8 camera with single frame, and I don't even think she knew that it had single frame capability, but I got it, and in order to make that thing work, I needed a frame release, which was a cable that you attached to it, and basically you had a little trigger to it, and it wouldn't do it by itself. You had to have that attachment, and once you had that attachment, you could do the single frame. So that's what I did. I ended up we bought my father made a stand out of an enlarger, which is basically. It's one of those devices they had in classrooms where they put a piece of paper down onto a surface, and then there was a reflector at the top with a light bulb that basically took that image and projected it onto a screen. And so he just took the base of that, mounted it onto a table, and then we had to register, where the center point was, and then put a disc down with pegs, and then that became the animation stand. It was actually pretty sturdy, if we could have retrofitted a bunch of these things and probably just sold them, because to all the students in the world that wanted a animation stand, because there was really no inexpensive Super 8 camera stand for shooting animation. I'm sorry, I'm getting off the beaten path here, I think, but so when you started doing that. So Cal Arts was interested. What happened after that? Did you consider going?
Yes, I that's kind of an interesting little story. I decided to accept it, and I came out, and I was a little put off by the atmosphere, I guess, at the school. And I think emotionally, I probably really wasn't ready to be that far away from home for the first time and be in an environment that was pretty different from what I was used to and growing up in. I don't want to get into too much detail there, but
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. And let's say it was extremely liberal over there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll just say that. And very artsy.
Yes.
And
pretty different from the place I grew up and the atmosphere everything I was used to, basically.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that. I've heard that from a lot of different people.
I was at orientation, and I just felt like, I just don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I can function here. I think I don't think it's a good fit for my temperament, my personality.
Right.
So I ended up leaving, and basically came back home and I tried to get into my second choice, which was Edinburgh, University of Pennsylvania,
Right.
then Edinburgh State College, up in northwestern Pennsylvania, who had they had an animation program there, and they had already started the semester. They were several weeks into it, and so they felt like it would just be better for me. They said, "Yeah, you can start here. We'd love to have you, but we think you should wait until the winter semester, January, to start, rather than try to come in a few weeks behind everybody else. It'd just be easier for you to sort of start that way." So that's what I did. I just sort of waited until January, and I started at Edinburgh. Went there.
Oh, pretty
That was
cool.
my college experience.
So how long you go there for? You went there for, did you do a 2-year or 4-year program?
No, I was actually in a 4-year program, but I think I actually ended up going for 5.
Oh, wow.
I took on a very ambitious project again. This time it was a 23-minute animated film, which I guess you could say that's a special length. That's like a half-hour, special length.
Right.
Never made it to color. It just only made it to pencil test stage. And
you showed me some of it, and it was pretty impressive, I thought.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I'm not happy with the story. I wasn't really happy with the story back then. I'm even more unhappy with the story today. But I'm happy with some of the animation I did, even, back then. I was happy that, I think some of the animation is successful in it.
What was the name?
And again,
I'm sorry, what was the name of it? It was,
the name of it is Fish Hooked.
And I remember seeing, you did every single frame of that film, right? You didn't have any help? And
Yes. I had no help. I did every single scene, and I did it all on one level, which, back then I didn't know that was, people split stuff up on different levels. I just figured, okay, you just do the drawing, and everybody that's in the drawing, you put on the same piece of paper,
Right. Just in case people don't know out there, when you're shooting pencil animation, you generally put the background down underneath on the paper. You put it on a light board, then you put the character on top of it, almost like it's a cell, and the cell kind of blocks out part of that background, and it seems to be walking in front of it. So Bill ended up doing all the background work on these things, which
I did the background separate on a separate level, but the characters, if there was like multiple like crowd scenes, I did all the people in the crowd on one level rather than split up the characters.
Wow. So
that's what a lot of people were surprised at when they saw it. I was like, well, isn't that what everybody does? I didn't know. Again, that was a lot of, where I went to school. I mean, the man who was in charge of the animation program was not an animator. He was a documentary filmmaker. So he knew a lot about sound and a lot about editing and a lot about how to put a film together.
Right.
He didn't know a lot about animation. I mean, he knew enough to be able to teach the courses, but he was not an animator himself.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff I was still learning from books. I mean, the Frank and Ollie book came out, The Illusion of Life came out just right at the time I was starting school.
Was that 81? Was that 1981?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it came out, I think, in that fall of 81, I think, and that's when I bought it, or maybe summer of 81.
Right.
And then that was the semester I sat out and started them in January of 82. But all during that fall, I was like going through that book, like devouring it, hey, how do you do this? This is the perfect thing of like this. I want to be a Disney animator, so this is the book that's really going to help me get me there. I think that even more than the Preston Blair book, I thought this is perfect.
Yeah. It had everything in there. Examples of animation, the styles, the different styles, and how to approach the characters. And it's an amazing piece of work. I did the same thing. I think I read it in a day, and then I keep going back to it, to like sections. It's perfect. Perfect, especially if you want to be a Disney animator, or you want to work in feature animation. That was the thing to go to.
Yeah.
So you did your 5 years over there, and then what happened? What happened after you got your film done? When you showed that film, was that the final thing? That was your project for the 5th year?
Yeah. I mean, the original intention was to finish it in color, but as it became apparent the last year, it was like I wasn't going to need more time to even finish the pencil test, let alone the color. So, even though it was a requirement to have a finished film, he made the exception for me, and he said, "Okay, we'll let you, graduate with a pencil test, basically."
Mm-hmm.
And the thought of trying to finish that in color was just so daunting that oh my gosh! I mean, if I'd done a half a length of that film, that would have still been a long film. It could have been doable that I could have maybe done it in color, but yeah, there's no way with that length. There's just no way.
Right.
When I'm one person, I mean, so and then I had a big showing at the film area where all the classes were, and a lot of my friends showed up, and I got so much support from all my friends all the way through the years of working on that. And people always ask me, like, how's it going? And well, we can't wait to see it when it's done. And it's so supportive.
Right.
I was even in a fraternity, and even my fraternity brothers were supportive of it, and really, really were, encouraging and kind of cheering me on with that. And most of them showed up too to the final showing. That last semester I was there.
Right.
So yeah.
It must have been really cool to screen it. Did you get a lot of applause at the end, or?
Yes.
Cool. How many people? Do you remember how many people were there at the final screening?
Oh gosh, I'd say we probably had maybe 30 to 40. Maybe we had a good sized crowd.
That's a good decent sized crowd to watch it.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. There was the film. I guess the film lab, or I don't know what you'd call it, the film where the film classes are. It's not that big of an area,
right.
So I mean, they had all the chairs packed in there where they could, because that was where the projection was, and that was where the screen was, and so we had to have it. That was kind of like where we had to have it. So
right. So that was now part of your. Was that your entire portfolio, or did you have a portfolio of drawings and the film? Or
that was the main part of the portfolio. I think it ended up being mostly the portfolio when I went around getting for jobs, because even though I had drawings of life drawings and landscape drawings in my portfolio or whatever else, I can't remember what else I had in there. It seems like most of the places where I was applying just wanted to see the reel. They just wanted to see the animation. So since it was such a long film, we cut it down and just picked, the best scenes.
Right.
And we said this isn't going to make a lot of sense because this is cut out, but we cut it down, I think, to maybe less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because that's even probably too long, but we thought they're never going to watch a 23-minute film. They may sit for a 10-minute.
Right. Right.
So that's pretty much what I shopped around, and that's where I got pretty much my first 3 jobs.
Wow. So the first job you went to, you sent your reel, and they took a look at it, and what did they say? What was that?
That was at a small commercial studio in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Really small outfit, and it was called Kensington Falls Animation. I was there for maybe 8-9 months, and then I went to Burgess Jones in Minneapolis, a little bit of a larger commercial studio.
They did a lot of educational films, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. A lot of that probably was done before I got there, but I think they were kind of known for some of that. And
right.
They were mostly, it was pretty much just commercials when I was there. I was there a little more than 2 years.
Right. And then after that, you went to
Don Bluth.
So how did that all come about? Because you were working at Burgess Jones, and then they sent you a letter, and they just said, "Hey, we heard about you, and you're hired."
No. What happened was my friend.
It never works. It never works like that until you become known, and then that's when you actually get the phone call. But yeah, go ahead. No, I have to hear this. I think I know the story, but this is for everybody else. So. This is for everybody else. All 10 people that are listening to this podcast they're waiting for this tidbit of information.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think it was probably my first couple weeks there. They put me in an office with Bruce Smith, really talented animator.
Yes.
He was like, even back then, even back in 1987, he was like considered like the top of his game.
Yeah.
Basically. And I think it was just because we were the two new guys there, and we were just the office that was available was large, so there was enough room for two people in it.
Yeah.
Most of the offices were one person. So anyway, we got to know each other. We're talking or whatever, and Bruce was going to come on full time there because he liked it there.
Right.
But workflow kind of dried up a little bit, and Bruce was getting offers back in LA here, and he was like, what should I do? And they said, hey, if you got work offers in LA, we probably should let you take those because we're not sure how long we can keep you here, because they were paying him a good salary, which is what he's worth, of course. So he left.
Right.
And we didn't have any contact after that, but he remembered me somehow. And about 2 years later, a little more than 2 years later, I had been thinking about leaving, and I was actually, exploring other possibilities at the time. And out of the blue, Bruce calls me at work, and he says, hey, this is Bruce. I'm working now for Don Bluth, and they're looking for people, and I think you should submit your portfolio. And I says, Bruce, I submitted my stuff to Disney last year. This would have been 88 or 87. I can't remember now. And I said, they turned me down. And I said, I figured Bluth standards were probably just as high as Disney's. I don't know that I would get in. He says, no, I think you do well. He says, let me talk to John Pomeroy, and John trusts me on this. And I think that, I think you'll do well. And I says, okay. So I submitted, pretty much the same reel, because that's all I had with my, animation from my student film from Edinburgh. Mm-hmm. And got a call a few weeks later saying that, I found out that's another kind of interesting story. Don Bluth was supposed to be doing a tour, promotional tour for All Those Who Go to Heaven. And he was going to be at the mall in downtown Minneapolis.
Wow.
And I knew that Don was working in Ireland, and John Pomeroy was working in LA here. So he was heading up the studio in LA. So I figured, well, John's the one who's going to know about my work. Don won't know it, but I want to go meet Don Bluth. So I'll go down to the mall downtown there with some of the friends from my work who didn't know I was looking for another job. And even including the production manager or producer, I think. And we go there, and all of a sudden, these people are like in front of a table, and it was almost this weird kind of almost like a Hollywood moment. These people just part like the Red Sea, and there, instead of Don Bluth, is John Pomeroy. And a few of the people from work were there. Hey, we've been talking to John about you, Bill. And then John's like, oh, you're Bill Waldman. Hey, look, I got a job for you. And I'm like, whoa, what the? And in front of these people, other people who didn't know I was looking for work, and they didn't know I was like, hey, you're thinking of leaving? Like, what's going on here? So it was a kind of a weird thing, but it was a nice way to find out.
Right.
That told by John Pomeroy himself that he had a job for me, and he wanted me to come there.
Wow, that's pretty wild. You're expecting Don to get John.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Well,
so I started. That was like right before Thanksgiving, I think, if I remember right. It was like mid to late November when that happened, and so they said, "Well, since it's right before the holidays, we probably should have you start right after the holidays, rather than you might probably want to spend the holidays with your family, and we'll get this going after." So that's what I did. I started in January of 1990, right after the new year. It was pretty much.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's really, you hear all these stories, you hear all these stories, how people got into the business, and they're all over the place, but but each one is kind of like, has a little bit of magic to it, and it sounds like you were touched by magic right then and there, Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Hollywood came a courting. So how was the move like to California when you went to Bluth that first day when they brought you in? And
I remember my first day, I got there very early because I was really nervous, and I don't think anybody was there yet. I mean, I probably was one of the first people in the building. The building was almost empty. And I remember just sort of like waiting for like someone to give me some instruction, like where do I sit or where do I, what do I do here? Do I got to fill out papers or what? I remember just walking around and looking at the walls where they had some of the model sheets up. And at the time they were finishing up Rockadoodle.
Right.
And I just kept saying to myself, I can't believe I'm here.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm here. I just kept saying that to myself. I just can't believe I'm here.
Right.
So it was just again, a surreal kind of almost strange moment. But it was good. They seemed to like my work early on, even though I felt like I was really like, because at Bajas Jones I was just doing cleanup and in between.
Right.
I was not in Pittsburgh. I was actually animating. So it had been a little more than 2 years since I'd animated.
Right.
And I was just like, felt like I was really rusty at the beginning. Oh my gosh, can I still do this? And worried. But it's like animation is kind of like riding a bike. If you haven't ridden in a while, it might be a little shaky at first. You ride it for a little bit, and you sort of get the hang of it again. You remember, the memory comes back.
Yeah, all the little bits and pieces, all the little tricks come back to you and stuff, and
yeah,
and then you get into the zone,
Yes.
which is at once again another magical place when it's just you and the drawing board and you're just doing your thing,
Yes.
Yeah, I think the first time I went out to LA, when I was hired out in LA, and I was going from New York to Los Angeles, was culture shock for me, and it was the same thing. Can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm doing this. And but then the fear sets in. Like, am I going to be able to cut this? Am I going to last more than a day? Am I going to last more than a week? Are they going to find out I'm a fraud? All this stuff goes through your head. And, and in reality, once you're there, you're ready. If they're ready to take a chance on you, you're ready. So when you came into Bluth, did they put you in my office? Because we shared an office. We weren't working together right away, were we? Because
no, I was in a cubicle for a while. I remember,
right,
with some of the other people that were doing in betweens or cleanup and stuff like that. And then I can't remember at what point they moved me into the office. I think what it was I think, if I remember right, Ken Duncan had that office. And when he left a month or so, maybe a few weeks after I started there and went to Disney.
Right.
And I think when that office became available, that's when they moved me in, and they probably moved you in at the same time.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was probably a few weeks or maybe a month after I'd started that I went into that office.
Yeah. Because I think it was the next office over. I don't know if that was such a good move for me to do that, but I did it. But whatever. It was fun because we were right next to John Pomeroy's office.
Right.
So, did you enjoy working at Bluth? You did, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah,
I did quite a bit. And there were some tough moments in there, but overall, it was a really good experience.
Yeah. You were like a footage monster over there. You were producing a lot of footage, I recall. Do you remember what your average was per week? I think you were.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I was horrible. I was horrible over there. I was doing like not even 3 feet a week. And then I eventually got up the footage to a certain point where I think it was up to maybe 5 or 7 feet a week. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I just, I was totally intimidated. I didn't tell people that, but I was really intimidated because there was so much great talent around us. And then you came into the office and I just remember you burning through. I mean, they would give you long stuff to do. You get these long scenes and you would somehow get these things approved. And I thought, I thought that was, fantastic. I don't know if it was your just stick-to-itiveness or your planning or whatever you were doing there. I don't know. It was, I just remember you getting the stuff done and getting on to the next thing.
Yeah, I do remember at one point, I mean, I think you had to be, so when you're talking about footage, I remember you had to be at least at 5 feet to be given the title of animator, 5 feet a week.
Right.
And I think that's what it was. I think at one point I did hit that within like a month or so.
Right.
Or a couple months of me being there. I can't remember what the date was, but I remember John Pomeroy coming in and telling me, or maybe I went into his office and he told me that, I was officially being the title and without a raise, that was good too, because, back then I wasn't making that much, but I was making enough to be able to, to live here. So that was good.
Right.
That was one of my big fears of moving here. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what they're paying me is going to be able to, can I live there? Because you hear all this stuff. If you don't live in California, you hear all this, oh, it's so expensive to live there. Oh my gosh, this and this and that. And you got to be making a ton of money to be able just to make it, to survive there.
Right.
So that was one of my big fears. And luckily I was able to, because I was asking people, what do you make? And what do apartments go for? And, I was trying to, because that was my big worries, but luckily that all worked out.
Yeah.
So.
When you were working, so when you came in, you were on not Rockadoodle. You didn't work on a Rockadoodle, did you?
I think the first week or so I did some in-betweens for somebody because they didn't have anything ready for me to actually animate. So I did some in-betweens. Then it was like, we did that Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera for the ride for Universal Studios in Florida.
That's right.
And that was the first thing I worked on because they were having problems getting, Troll in Central Park, which would eventually was called, but it was called something else, I think, before that. Can't remember now.
It had to do with monkeys. There were monkeys.
Right. There was a monkey was the main character, but I don't remember. It might have been the same title, but the story was very much different.
Right.
And so they were retooling all of that. And so in the meantime, they gave us that project to work on for the Universal Studios. And that was the first thing I did there until the feature was ready.
What do you remember? What characters you worked on? I remember there was a fireman chase in that movie. I think it was in the
Hanna-Barbera one.
Yeah, it was the Flintstonesville or whatever they call it. That
yeah,
I think you worked on a ton of stuff from that section, didn't you?
I remember doing some stuff of Dastardly, Muttley, and Elroy in the spaceship going away, and the Jetsons section.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got that. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing in the Scooby-Doo section. I did some stuff in the Flintstone section. I remember it was when Fred Flintstone pulls the alarm, and then it's that bird, and it screeches, and that's the alarm that goes off to tell everybody it's time to go home for work.
Right.
So I did the bird. I can't remember it. Boy, that was so long ago. I have to go back and try to look at some of this. If I still have my VHS tape of my pencil test.
I was talking to Matt Bates, and Matt was talking about animating Muttley and Dick Dastardly and Elroy. And I guess because they're through the whole ride, I guess everybody got a chunk of that to do.
Yeah.
And it all looks like it's from one hand, which is interesting because I've watched it recently, and you'd never think that a bunch of different animators were doing sections on that, Yeah.
Well, I remember Linda Miller and Larry Leaker did the layouts, the animation layouts for that character layout, and they did such a great job. Those drawings were just so nice to work from.
Right.
So if you use that as your map to start your blueprint to start to go from,
mm-hmm.
you usually ended up okay. And so I think that's what held it together, made it unified.
Right.
All their drawings and on. So
yeah, I don't know. It was an amazing achievement, I think.
Yeah.
Think
about it. Yeah.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at cartoonerific.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
Well, that's it for today. Bill will be back next week for part 2 of the interview. It's a 2-parter, so it will conclude next week. And he'll be talking about his career at Disney. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. If you really like what you're listening to, please tell a friend or tell a family member or tell the neighbor's dog or cat or groundhog, whatever's in the area. Just let them know that the Cartoonerific podcast is here. And we have a bunch of episodes, and we have a bunch more coming on. So, help us grow. And that's the highest form of compliment that you can give us, is letting people know about us and saying nice things. So coming up in the next couple of weeks, we have Mr. Willie Ito. Willie was an animation artist back in the 50s. He became a layout artist, and he worked at Warner Brothers. He helped design the graphic image of Beanie and Cecil back when they were being transferred over from puppets to animation. So he was instrumental in that. And then he ended up at Hanna-Barbera doing a lot of our favorite cartoons over there. So he'll be coming up. We have Debbie Weiss. She is the curator and owner of the Wonderful World of Animation Art Gallery in California. She will be on. We'll be talking about animation art collecting. And another person we're going to have on is Mr. Mark Arnold. Mark is is an expert on the Patty Freeling cartoons. He wrote a book about them. We're going to talk about that. So we have all that lined up and much, much more in the coming weeks. So please stick around. Anyway, I want everybody to have a great day. I want you to have a terrific week, and we hope to see you again real soon. Thank you for tuning in.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.